now. Read my pencil. Okay, so good morning and welcome to today's live webinar. So this morning we have two colleagues here, Sandra Cleary and Sandra Carroll, who are going to walk us through sharing quality assurance good practice in PhET Assessment 2020. So this really covers good practice and quality assurance for further education and training. And it really represents the start of developing a quality culture for KWETB as an organisation. So you are all very welcome to this morning's session. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand straight over to our colleague here, Sandra Cleary, who's going to start off this morning's presentation. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope that you find this session useful. So Sandra, I'm going to hand over to you, and you might need to unmute yourself.
Hello everybody, and you're all very welcome to our presentation this morning on sharing QA good practice in PhET Assessment 2020. For those that don't know me, my name is Sandra Cleary. I am part of the quality team and work in the operations section for FE. My colleague Sandra Cleary from training will also present QA good practice from the training perspective. We can take comments or questions at the end of the presentation, and we'll be supported by Angela Higgins in the Q&A session. Oh, sorry, it's not moving. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So for the agenda for my presentation includes good practice in assessment process FE, COVID-19 highlights identified by QQI, risks associated with assessment COVID-19, KWETB responses to those risks, and key themes emerging. Now, first of all, the assessment process within FE involves 6 stages. The first stage is the assessment process, where learner portfolios are produced, learner evidence is assessed by the tutor assessor, it's marked and graded, provisional results are made available. The internal verification stage involves internal systematic checking, verifying assessment procedures, confirming assessment results. The IV report is produced. The external authentication stage involves independent confirmation of fair and consistent assessment in accordance with national standards, modification of a sampling basis. The EA report is produced. The results approval stage, consideration of EA and IV reports, review, approve and sign off of results, and agree submission of results to the QQI. The requesting certification stage, centres have the responsibility to submit approved results to QQI. And the learner appeal stage is where learners are notified of their right to appeal, centres to submit the appeal N10 to the QA office. The external examination takes place, centre notified of appeal outcome, the centre notifies learner of the appeal outcome, and the QA office notifies the QQI of any grade changes. Now, it is important for good practice that the correct terminology is used when referring to assessment. We have awards and programmes, so the award can be seen as the destination for the learner. This is determined by QQI, which includes statement of standards, i.e. what needs to be achieved by the learner. The programme could be seen as the journey of the learner. So it's the learning experience, what the learner needs to achieve in order to reach that award. It's developed by the provider, in our case the ETB, which enables the learner to reach the standard of knowledge, skills and competence of an award. We also have we have program descriptor, which is the major award, and the program module, which is the minor award. In relation to assessment techniques, there needs to be coherence in assessment methodology. So the assessment techniques and common award systems include the examination, assignment, skills demonstration, collection of work, learner record or project. For good practice, when briefs are being designed, they should clearly state the assessment technique to the learner. For good practice, there needs to be consistency in presentation of program descriptors and modules. All up-to-date program descriptors and associated program modules can be found on the QA site. So all coordinators and project workers have access to the QA site, and once you have access, you should click on the follow icon in the top right-hand corner to receive up-to-date QA notifications. This is our mode of communication to you. So the front page of the QA site is where news and updates are relayed. These notifications go back to 2017 when the QA site was established. The second tab on the QA site is validated programs. So the QA site has been reviewed over the summer to ensure that all programs validated to KWE2B are listed accurately on the site. They are broken into fields of learning and then into levels. So an example of this screenshot, we have the major awards under education, health and welfare. And if you go into any of those, example here is the applied social studies. So you will see the program descriptor, and then there is a folder which houses all the associated program components for that award. For good practice, if a component award is not listed under a particular program, the centre must contact the QA office to seek approval to deliver this component under a particular major award. The QA office will then request QQI to add this component to our validated programs, but only if we are validated to deliver under another major award. The assessment tab on the QA site. So this tab shows the schedule of assessment in the QA calendar, and I'm currently working on this assessment schedule for 2021, and it will be uploaded shortly. So this is also where the IV reports must be uploaded for each certification period. So to upload, you click on the IV reports, select your centre, select the year, then the certification period, and upload. Policies tab. So this is where this brings you to all associated policies and procedures within KWE2B QA processes. I've just done an example here of the learner portfolio templates. For consistency, all tutor, coordinator and learner portfolios should be presented in a consistent manner across the organisation. All assessment materials should have correct logos. There should be no reference to FETAC. The QQI logo should only be visible on the program component descriptor and should not be used on any other documentation. So to recap, for good practice in administration of assessment, use correct up-to-date templates for learner, tutor, coordinator portfolios. Do not use the QQI logo on material. Estimates submitted to the QA office should be accurate. Assessment adjustment folder should have all fields accurately completed. IV reports should be detailed and accurate. The RAP sign-off sheets should be submitted giving a true account of the grades achieved. All documentation for the EA share on OneDrive should be uploaded in an orderly fashion. So for good practice then is to adhere to deadlines. So submit in a timely manner for the estimates to the QA office. Submission of assessment adjustment record to the QA office. Internal verification reports. Submission of RAP sign-off sheets with grade details. Submission of authenticated results to the QBS. Adhere to deadlines for QQI external appeal application, and always remember that delays may result in consequences for the learners. So our last certification period now for 2020 will be December. And as you can see there, the deadline for submission of estimates is Monday, the 26th of October. And I'll be sending out an invitation today or tomorrow for centres to submit estimates for that period if they're going to submit. We have, in FE, we have 6 certification periods that we submit: February, April, August, October and December. So now we're going to talk about the COVID-19 highlights identified by QQI evaluation. So QQI carried out an evaluation on the impact of COVID-19 modifications to teaching, learning and assessment in further education and training. The report gives an analysis of experiences reported to QQI from a range of stakeholders. So the twin focus of QQI during the COVID crisis was to prioritise learners working towards terminal qualifications and those seeking to progress, example through the CAO. Another focus was to maintain engagement with the learners and support remote teaching and learning. Within the teaching and learning, it was found that this continued remotely by a variety of digital communication platforms. Learning by doing was a tough challenge. Access to work placement and practical facilities was restricted. Teachers and learners missed the face-to-face interaction of the physical classroom environment. Learners consistently commended the availability and responsiveness of teaching staff and their efforts to maintain engagement. Learners identified that remote learning provided greater flexibility and control on how and when they accessed programme material. Assessment was guided by a spirit of collaboration. Positive feedback regarding online external authentication from the EAs. Learner data indicates that they felt confident in their ability to complete assessments and that these were fair. Alternative assessments were found to be improved assessment instruments. Assessments perceived as less stressful than the regular examination format. There was a challenge to engage level 1 to 3 learners in remote assessment, and most of this certification was delayed until the autumn. Practitioners felt confident in the integrity of assessment. Some responses indicated a lack of awareness among practitioners of measures to support academic integrity in an online and remote context. Practitioners need to be equipped with appropriate technology, example anti-plagiarism software, and expertise in academic integrity. Practitioners want to retain the arrangements for online submissions of assessment and tools for the provision of feedback to learners. Concerns raised in the evaluation showed that the backlog of work placement and challenge in securing placements, the challenges of learner engagement, particularly for those vulnerable populations, delivery and assessment of practical skills and provision at levels 1 to 3, lack of experience among practitioners of assessment design and online assessment methodologies, professional development required to enhance knowledge of blended hybrid learning, and proposal for more sharing of expertise, peer learning, and to reduce the trial and error. So there was 5 main risks identified by KWETB Quality Council, and action was taken to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 to assessment. So the 5 risks included the volume of certification, the validity, reliability and integrity of the adapted assessments, incomplete work placement, internal verification and the external authentication process. So the lockdown occurred towards the end of the academic year, and centres had covered much of the curriculum by March, and learners were focusing mainly on coursework and assessment. So February results had been approved and gone through for certification. A total of 542 portfolios were submitted for February. However, due to the impact of COVID on external authentication, the April certification period was postponed until June. In June, we had 5,306 portfolios plus the 705 from April. For August, there was a total of 968 portfolios submitted for certification. So the mitigating action taken by the Quality Council for the volume of certification. So priority groups were identified and data collated and collected. The priority groups included learners who were progressing to the CAO, learners who were progressing to regulatory employment, learners who were impacted by the 5-year QQI completion rule. The priority group was then extended to learners who were in a position to submit for June, providing they did not have substantial assessment adjustment that required Quality Council approval. The validity, reliability, integrity of adapted assessment. So due to the impact of COVID, some assessments were adapted to alternative assessment, and the mitigating action adapted assessment was recorded by the quality team. Adaptions were approved and records kept at centre level and recorded as part of the IV process. Where there was substantial and significant change to the assessment, the Quality Council approval was required. Documentation that was needed for this was the rationale, proposed adapted briefs, marking schemes, and any other relevant documentation. And you can see here for June certification, we had 224 assessments adapted across 2,492 portfolios. And in August, we had 50 assessments adapted across 240 portfolios. And this just gives you a breakdown of where those assessments were. We can see there for June, the majority was exam to assignment. We had 188 assessment adjustments across 2,331 portfolios. In August, the majority would have been exam to online exam, where we had 18 across 76 portfolios. And I'll just draw your attention there to the adapted assessment requiring Quality Council approval. In June, we had 5 assessment adjustments across 23 portfolios, and in August we had 9 across 41 portfolios. So the Quality Council approved that learners who had 50% or more work experience placement completed, they would be deemed to have completed sufficient placement to proceed to certification. So in June we had 498 100% complete and 82 in August. 50% or more, we had 93 in June and we had 2 in August. There were 19 learners were identified who had achieved less than 50% placement completed. The Quality Council approved an alternative assessment in the form of an assignment for levels 5 and level 6 work experience. And it's important to note that these contingency plans were only in place for the COVID-19 emergency period. So it was recognised that the volume of certification and lack of access to centres due to the emergency restrictions could lead to the integrity of the IV process. So a revised and more detailed IV report was implemented, whereby sampling was applied to each programme leading to a major award, ensuring that all components and assessors were included. And this is just a note on good practice for internal verification. So it should always be a systematic and detailed process, showing that the learner evidence has been generated appropriately, matches assessment requirements. COVID-19 impacted assessments should be recorded by the internal verifier. All results documented and recorded accurately. There is evidence of planned assessment, adherence to plans and schedules. There are no errors in relation to marking or transferring of results. All learner records are available. All documentation is in place. The IV report should record all reasonable accommodations, compassionate considerations and assessment malpractice, and correctional action should always be taken before it reaches the external authentication stage. For June and August periods, an online platform was provided within the OneDrive shared system. So the EAs were given temporary KWETB accounts. Coordinators uploaded learner assessment evidence, tutor folder, coordinator folder, IV report and QBS result sheet to the folder, which was then shared with the EA. So given that we have 6 certification periods that we use, and there has been substantial considerable level of external authentication in the past calendar year, a sampling strategies for external authentication included. The more significant adaptations to assessment which required Quality Council approval work experience modules that were adapted within the approved alternative assignment, historical issues with the award, new programme being delivered, new tutor delivering. And that's the breakdown of what was EA'd from February to August. We had 9 EAs out across 507 portfolios in February. We had 2 online across 63 portfolios in June, and we had 4 EAs across 75 portfolios in August. So this is just a breakdown. It's a flow chart on showing the online EA process. So the circles indicate the start and the finish of the process. The diamond shape indicates where decisions are made, and the green then shows the additional steps that were implemented for the online process. So for October certification, we just had a wrap yesterday. We had a blend of on-site and online external authentication. And all coordinators should be aware of the process for online external authentication and to adhere to good practice. What must be included is all learner assessment evidence, the IV report, the tutor folder, coordinator folder, and QBS result sheet. And I just have some screenshots here. This would have been from June. So a folder is set up for June 2020, and then within that folder is set up a folder for all the EAs. This would have been Trudy Barnett, and under Trudy then we would have all the centres, folder for each centre that she's authenticating in. This one would have been Wicklow, and within Wicklow then any major awards that she's authenticating. So one of them would have been childcare level 5, and then within that folder we would have all the components that Trudy would be authenticating. So in this case it's special needs assisting. So a folder would be set up for, as we said before, the evidence, the coordinator, the IV report, the result sheet, and the tutor folder. The coordinator at centre level then would, in the assessment evidence folder, set up a subfolder for each learner. So I've just, the learner name would appear, I've just crossed it out here for data protection. Within that learner then, within each learner folder then is another subfolder for the assessment evidence. So for the special needs assisting, there's a learner record and there's a skills demonstration. So within the learner record folder then uploaded would be all the that learner's work, and also for good practice the correctional version. So we would have where marks were awarded and also tutors' comments. And then for the skills demo, we would have, in the skills demo, we would have the write-up piece uploaded to the skills demo write-up piece, and then we would have the video or movie or whatever the skills practical evidence was uploaded. So for emerging themes then of good practice from the EA reports, we're only focusing on February to August. I didn't have time to capture the October one. A review will be carried out on all EA reports at the end of the year to include RAP actions and to capture all certification periods. So I just focused on the good practice comments that came in across assessment and administration from the EA reports. So in assessment, it was found that there was high standards in teaching and learning evidence. The positive attitude from tutors and real engagement was evident. Assessment evidence documentation is transparent, enabling learners to follow precise instruction. Excellent guidelines given to tutors. Assessment briefs were clear. Marking allocations accurate and reflect learners' performance. Assessment corrected and graded with transparency and integrity. Excellent marking schemes, links between briefs and marking schemes evident. There was constructive feedback given to learners, feedback detailed and actionable. Assessments closely linked to the learning outcomes. Adaptation to assessments due to COVID-19 crisis was emerging themes within the administration for these periods. So there was excellent organisation of information on 365 OneDrive, was efficient and easy to navigate. All learner evidence accurately uploaded. Documentation clearly labelled and presented in a professional manner. All necessary material accessible. Now, one of our centres presented learner assessment evidence in the format of e-portfolios for August certification period. These were authenticated and the report found outstanding design to the e-portfolios, which enabled and enhanced the overview of the modules and contents, access to briefs, marking, evidence, IV reports, links between briefs, marking and evidence, comparison of marking and evidence across learners. Evidence looked much more polished in digital format. Great work using remote solutions to tasks like interviews. So we have 2 upcoming webinars. On the 14th of October, we have managing and implementing e-portfolios in your centre. This will be presented by Katrina Cullen and Rachel Doherty. And on the 11th of November, we have implementing e-portfolios for assessment towards FET educators, presented by Rachel Doherty and supported by Katrina Cullen. Now, all it takes now is thank you for taking the time for joining us today. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague, Sandra Carl, who is going to give us a flavour of best practice across the training side of the house. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can indeed, Sandra. Good to go.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. So you can see what I can see, I hope.
We can indeed.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm hoping you're finding this presentation interesting. Sandra clearly has covered so much in her presentation that I'm not going to repeat everything she said. I'm just going to give you a flavour of how training a little bit different than FE side and how we've incorporated and handled the issues that we've occurred due to COVID-19. So we're going to look at an outline of what training encompasses and what processes are used to ensure quality. We'll look at COVID-19 government guidelines, training responses to delivering training during COVID, results overview, and then what next. So this is what we do. We cover apprenticeships both pre and post 2016. So that's new apprenticeships. So that could be like hairdressing. There's so many, auctioneering that we're looking at now. There's sales reps. It's a wide portfolio that we're going to be looking at. So then we have community training. So we have local training initiatives, we have STPs, we have CTCs and youth development. We have a wider range of contract training, both QQI and others. We have City and Guilds. So there's an innovation and development project that I'm sure you're aware of that looks at I suppose investment from Sulis is looking at how we can use digital badging and make sure that we're using RPL specifically in the hotel and restaurant industry and matching the RPL of people that work in the industry and giving them a digital badge. So it's new and exciting, and that's a new project. So it's a pilot scheme. So even when I give you the figures later on, keep that in mind that it's new. We've only newly got qualified for FDA, it's a new bakery qualification, and then we've the online skills hub, and that's under contract training. Now, Sandra already presented this, so all I've added is in blue is how we're different slightly on the training side. So when it comes to assessment, we don't develop our own assessments. They come in a pack. So we have module descriptors. All our QQI modules come through CAM, so we can only use what they have allowed us to use. And that's in level 3, level 4, level 5 and level 6. There's also some for construction and there's also some for quarrying, but we don't use the latter two. We look at internal verification and we add a peer review form that's done by, let's say, another tutor checks the other tutor, so they are peers of the same course and they make sure that they're running the same way. Any issues then are in the form and they're sent in to me immediately. We also do an internal conduct of assessment verification where I kind of call to all the centres at least once a year for each programme and do a report on how a particular assessment event runs. So that's basically checking that we're running to standards in how we're presenting an exam, how a skills demonstration has been conducted, and making sure that the standards are accountable, that everything is fair and consistent, and that we're trying to bring consistency across all centres and all programmes. The external authentication is the same as the FE side, we have external authentication, but we do an EA on every single program that we run. So it's not just a sample strategy that we use. So when COVID came, we were that for the 10 programs that ran come through in June and August, we had EA them previously, so they all had good reputations. There was no new tutors, there was the same material as before, and we had no issues running it, and it reduced the risk that we were exposed to due to COVID. When we look at results approval, the internal audit of every program is conducted on spot check results, administration of the program, and the program summary of findings is presented at RAP. And I suppose for every program that comes in, I have to do that and make sure that I account for each learner. I do a spot check on the learner's work, make sure that the marks are allocated properly and added correctly and transcribed correctly. And it's really important because it validates everything that's happened before. And also in COVID, that was very helpful because as an EA myself, when I'm doing the audits, it was really helpful that I could spot issues that may have occurred or the EA may have picked up otherwise. Requesting certification, we run it through an RCCRS system, and then we have to upload it to a QBS system. So there's two different systems that we have to integrate in order to get certification. It's a little bit more tricky, but it does mean that we have our results already aligned on the F12 that comes into us. Okay, so validated programs under QQI, so they're listed, as I said, on CAM, so they're only the ones we can use. Again, it's 3, 4, 5, and 6. We are looking at integrating these because they need to be updated. These are old historic programs that we're going to try and integrate with FE in the future and make sure that they're more up to date and more relevant to today's industries. Each course is mapped out with QQI major awards. So you have to make sure, like Sandra was explaining, that the awards that we're offering and the modules that we're offering coexist together, that we're targeting the right award and the right modules are used. Sometimes we use FE validated programs to meet market needs, and that's with their permission, of course. And then we use separate FE documentation and follow their processes to make sure that we audit it correctly. We have other validated awards then under City and Guilds, as I explained at the RPL project. We also have bar and barista training and restaurant skills. We have licenses for the Microsoft Word, ILM, MOS, and they're all using the online skills hub. We have the new bakery qualifications, and sometimes, again, like we said, we use the FE validated courses. So sometimes when you hear about, especially in the training side, everything is F101, F11s, F12s, F04s. I just wanted to give you a kind of a synopsis, a snapshot of what these actually are. An F01 is basically an outline of how a program is going to run. They tell me the day they're going to be submitted, and it's signed off by themselves, it's signed off by me, and it's signed off by our training manager when it comes into the office. Okay, any changes to that then has to be a new F01 submitted. We have module descriptor requests. So because our modules are already developed, if a program wants to come in and look at these, we can send them out, obviously, but there's also a list that I'm allowed to send. So if, let's say I can send the assignment, but I can't send the exam or the skills demo because that's considered confidential, but they are allowed to come into the office and view them. It's a view only, there's no note taken from it. It's one of the rules that we have. We have an assessment calendar. So the F11 then comes in, and an F11 basically is a notification of any assessment event that's going to happen. So it tells me when the exam is going to happen, when a skills demo is going to happen, and this is exactly what it looks like. So it tells me the course, the location, who's the tutor, tells me what date it's going to run, what time the event is going to run, and when it tells me what test packs I have to send out. For every skills demo, for every exam, I have to send a test pack out with the numbers that they have allocated. So let's say this example is text production. So they've said they want 2 for the exam. So I will send 2 and also a copy for the instructor, which is 3. It will be marked on the envelope, and the envelopes are sent out and sealed by registered post. It's also expected that they're only open 10 minutes before an exam event. 2 learners are expected to sign the paper and the envelope that they come in. And these envelopes are kept and returned to us at the end of the programme, as long with all the paperwork, just so they're accounted for. Okay, so assessments. So the F12 is generated by the RCCRS, and this is basically a statement of results. It has to be signed off by the IV and the EA. We can change this. So let's say a mistake is found, we can just return the F12, and then the amendment is made by the provider, and then it's returned. This form has each learner's PPS, their names, how they appear on the search. The only issue is that we ask learners to make sure that there's the right name, as the same as they would have been previously certified under, or QQI will not allow them to go through and they'll appear as invalid. Results per module, targeted major word is also on it, and this is brought to the RAP and it's also signed off upon. General good practice in administration, all paperwork has to come in, completed and signed off. Notification of module descriptor requests forms, like I told you, the F01s, the F11s are given in a timely fashion and filled in correctly. If they're incomplete, sometimes they might send them in and they mightn't have the address, so I don't know where they want me to send them. So sometimes then I would ask for follow-up information. Request for learner support comes with backing documentation to support application. F12s have all the learners, all the subjects signed off by the IV, the EA and the chairperson of the RAP. All paperwork has KWTB logos. We keep to the deadlines, agreed times, and if any changes, it means that we resubmit the paperwork. This is heavily administrative management because we are accounting for every single thing we do. Everything is timed, everything is outlined clearly, so any changes have to be flagged. Assessment events should have an F04 which outlines when event that should be signed, all learners signed off by tutor, and when corrected, flag any issues. RAP documents signed off on, audit reports signed off on, peer reviews and IVs, the same, have to have paperwork in order, fully detailed and signed off upon, and all paperwork submitted folder so that I can audit it at the end. So government directions for COVID. Sandra went through a lot of these, and really what they're saying is public safety was the priority. Then we're looking at learners being central to everything we do. We moved a lot of our training programs online. We built agility and flexibility into our programs to make sure that we met the learners' needs while still adhering to the quality assurance practices we need to do. And we supported talent, and I suppose the skills hub that I'm going to talk about did that exceptionally well. And we built resilience in the fact that we as an organisation have come out of this. I suppose we've all learned a lot about technology. We've also learned a lot about the engagement with students, what works and what doesn't work. It's been a lot of trial and error, but I think we can all agree that we have now a good platform for blended learning for the future. So adaptation framework, it calls us to plan what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and how we're going to adapt. And like Sandra clearly said, any issues that were for adaptation had to be brought to the Quality Council and approved. We had to communicate with learners on an ongoing basis, and then we had to put a plan into action. So within training then, I suppose we had 4 kind of key things that we did. We stopped some programs because we had to link affected and tell them that we couldn't run the program because of the practical elements. Hairdressing is a good example on that one. We had adjusting of assessments exactly with approval of the Quality Council. Mostly it was mode of assessment where it was taught online. Exams were run online. We changed the modes of learning, so moving to various platforms to enable continuation of learning for students, and changes of offering. So we changed it to be not just for unemployed, but we also looked at people in employment who've lost their jobs due to COVID. So we're trying to suit the market. So online platforms meant teaching occurred online. New technologies facilitate and ensured good quality assurance practices for assessment events. And like Sandra went through previously with the EA and outlining the portfolios online, and make sure you did all the documentation to a secure network so it could be EA'd properly. Even though we were distant, the effectiveness of the EA wasn't affected. Incorporating risk analysis to RAP, managing all of the programs if any changes were made. Assessment events amended to enable continuation of programs, and communication across the board is key asset to learning. These are a snapshot of some of the challenges. So we had learners not engaging online with tutors. We had collective learning, not as easy to manage because you miss the classroom interaction. Issues with access to technology, and many of our learners, especially level 3 and level 4s, just didn't have access to the technology and platforms that we needed. This was worked through by providers, and they worked around it in many different ways. Family, childcare, mental health and other barriers, issues with Wi-Fi, huge learning curves at a fast pace. So for many people, it was hard to keep up with all the changes. Screen fatigue meant that we had to adapt how we ran classes from a typical 9 to 5 to maybe shorter 1-hour bursts. online question answers, and different ways of doing things. Lost in translation of technology. Sometimes the meaning is harder to get, because especially if you're the tutor and you have the class, it's very hard to see if somebody's falling behind, because you can't look over their shoulder and see how they're doing. And a big contention for us was PLSS. Reason for that was when they went to use the online skills hub, especially, it wasn't set up and not flexible enough to meet the changing needs that we needed it for. It was a barrier that many of my colleagues had to tackle and overcome. So looking at the numbers for April, we had 200 portfolios, 22 major awards, 54 learners. In June, we had 124 portfolios, 21 major awards, 64 learners. In July, August, we had 190 portfolios approved, 15 major awards and 50 learners. In October, we had 376, 42 major awards and 61 learners. Okay, so when we look then at the online skills hub, and this is only a snapshot from May to September, for MOS we had 110, for ILM we had 164, for Scrum we had 11. And that's just signed up and working through the programs. Okay. Then we look at for infection prevention and control, we had 1,018 and we have 785 certified so far. And then we had the City and Guilds project. We had professional room tours 28. That number seems low, but it takes 10 weeks roughly to work through the programme and make sure that the learners' RPL is checked out effectively to make sure the quality of the award given is appropriate to their experience. And then we had experience in hospitality badges, which is 31, and that's for people who are starting out in the industry. They have to have 140 hours of service. And I suppose it's just a taster badge, because the array that City and Guilds have is huge, in fairness. And this was just a pilot scheme, as I said before, that's kind of testing out the waters for digital badging. Changes in training to quality of assessment. So we had calculated risk and we had very little changes so far. Only the mode of delivery was the main issue where we're moving online. All programs went through the assessment process for April, July and August as per Quality Council. We had 2 programs that had to be EA digitally. Risk was reduced as I audited every program when it comes into the office. Like I explained, we have to do that for every program anyway. 2 changes to an F12 that was submitted from my audits, had to revert back to the provider. They changed the result and then we processed that. We had actually do you know when Sandra went through hers and she's talking about exam to assignments, skills demos to online, we had none of that for the June, July and August rounds. There was no changes. Those changes are being made now for courses that will continue. I won't probably get them into me until probably December, February, and probably even up till April next year. Okay, so no EAs for the 10 programs in June and August, because we had a good history. Like Sandra went through the criteria where it was a good history, no issues previously on an EA report, no change to tutors, no change to assessment events, no change to modules. Okay. Need for quality culture. I suppose this is embedded in everything we do. It's collective responsibility. It's not just the quality assurance team. It's not just me. It's not just Angela. It's not all. It's all and every one of us. We do it at the ground level up. Feedback means that we continuously cross-check quality, ensure processes and procedures are improved. And it's something that we have to work on continuously for the future. It's never going to be a day when we wake up and go, God, we cracked it. We have quality assurance down now. It's never going to be that lucky. Okay, so we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. So the Rock is talking a rock of sense to me in this. So he said, success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come. And the hope is that with our quality assurance processes and with the Quality Council and with the new subgroups that have been formed, we will improve our quality across KWHB and the FET sector, and that we work together as a team to make sure that we continuously improve it going forward. I'd like to thank you all very much for your time and your consideration and listen to me. I hope I gave you a good insight into the training side and quality assurance. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandra. That was very informative. So to both Sandras there, thank you so much for your presentations. I picked up and learned a lot along the way from both. I think it's a testament to all of the hard work that has gone on in centres by coordinators and tutors across the board. You know, and it's really positive to see that being acknowledged. So with that in mind, we have Angela Higgins here with us as well. So we would like to open up the floor for questions if anyone would like to come in. Just to kind of manage them, if you'd like to raise your hand, we can call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask a question. No questions coming in so far. While people are having a ponder about their questions, Angela, would you like to add anything at all?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to come in and say congratulations and thanks to Sandra Cleary and Sandra Carroll. It was actually very interesting to hear both sides of the story and to hear, you know, to see how close our commitment to quality is both across further education and training. And that really, I think what this year has done is really helped us to realise that we can start to move forward as a joined up system within KWETB, because our systems are so well evolved in both further education and training. So, and I'd really like to invite any questions. Now we just have until 11:30, I think. So, or anything people want to contribute, that's fine. If you are asking questions, the answers might be quite short, but we'll be noting anything that crops up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just
going to... I think Rachel has her hand up.
A look. Rachel, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good, thanks. That was really interesting. Thanks to both the Sandras. Just one thing I'd noticed, Angela, was, am I right in thinking that the permissions for providing blended assessments was only open for a particular period of time? And did I notice that you were looking at extending that, or looking for the requirements or the permissions to do that into the future? What's the situation with that?
That's a really good question, Rachel, and it also applies to the adaptations for work experience.
Okay.
So the situation currently is that the ETB sector are applying to QQI to be allowed to extend the arrangements beyond December 2020.
Okay.
More than likely to August 2021. And in fact, QQI have just given permission to extend the arrangements for work experience, the current arrangements for work experience, to 2021.
Okay.
And they've also given permission to adapt a number of different programs leading to major awards to August 2021 as well. So that's actually we're still in the process of formulating what that means for KWETB practitioners.
Okay, perfect.
And the only areas that we have a serious concern about then is that QQI are requesting more information from our sector in relation to fields like early childhood care and education, healthcare support and nursing studies. So they're looking for more information about how that is to be managed. That doesn't mean we won't continue to have issues around work experience. One of the big issues is that basically for work experience as we knew it before to go ahead is proving very difficult because of the restrictions on employers and challenges that employers are experiencing. So I suppose one piece of advice, if possible, that we're giving is to actually, traditionally, there's a work experience block in October every year. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to ask centres and practitioners to make, in as much as they can, to try to look to spring and summer 2021
for
the actual, and to enter into, if they can, to build relationships with employers in as much as they can to engagement. But as I said, there will be alternatives in relation to many of our programs and awards. So we do just need to, we have a quality team meeting tomorrow, and we just need to formulate how that's going to be organised across the ETB to ensure this consistency.
Perfect.
So thanks for that query.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, in terms of blended learning then, it's a slightly different situation, because effectively we were forced into a remote teaching and learning situation that isn't, you know, it's debatable whether it was actually blended learning. But what that's moving us towards then is much greater knowledge about what's required to design and develop blended learning programs. So we're caught up now in the situation where we have to make a decision about whether we apply to an extension of our scope as an organisation to include the delivery of blended learning programs.
Okay. I was going to ask that as well.
Yeah,
okay.
And that requires us to actually put together our quality assurance processes in relation to the delivery of blended learning. Okay. So what I've made a kind of, in talking to the management team, I've made a case for including that in the development of our new processes and procedures and policies. Brilliant. For quality assurance generally, as they'll affect the whole organisation.
Brilliant.
So we run the development alongside, because there are overlaps. So, for example, there are overlaps in relation to how we plan to quality assure teaching, learning and assessment. So it's the same whether if it's face-to-face or in a blended environment. What we have to do is it's a similar task in different contexts, do you know?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with that. But as far as I know, QQI are probably going to approve the continued approach to delivery of remote learning to supplement and support face-to-face delivery, given the situation. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to come on and ask a question?
Yeah, Angela, Ashley, could I ask a question?
Of course, Deirdre, go ahead.
It's in relation to the work experience also. I know you said it would be beneficial to push out the block to February, but we also do a day a week release, and that's where we're finding it an issue. So I hope maybe there might be some answers to that after your meeting. That's all. I just want to put that in there. Okay.
Thanks, Deirdre. And I think I actually think there may be other centres affected in the same way. So we'll actually make a note of that, because that's a very big challenge that will have to be addressed. And I'm glad you raised it. Thanks, Deirdre.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to come on and ask a question?
I have a question. Well, it's not a question. It's just what I really want to do is to start asking people about how they'd like to receive information and how they'd like to be communicated with to keep up to date with what's happening, I suppose, at a central level in terms of QA, because we are really entering a period of change within the FET in KWETB and quality assurance of our programs and services. So it's very useful for me. That's my job, and you may have noticed I've kind of moved out of the operational sphere, but what I'm moving into is supporting and scaffolding the development of our policies and procedures and the establishment of our governance system for further education and training, for quality assurance in further education and training. So what I plan to do is you will have seen the Quality Assurance Council newsletter that went out the other day. What I'm planning now is to send out a survey asking people how they'd like to receive communications, both about the changes, but also about operational issues. So you can, it would be nice if you could look forward to that, and it would be nice if we could get the maximum responses possible, because the goal is to actually put quality assurance at the heart of the learner's experience, but in doing that, not to have people suffer a great deal of pain about quality assurance, to make it something that's much more related to the heart of what our practice is. So that's a request and a clarion call to ask people to fill in the surveys when I send them out. And there won't be too many of them, but it's very useful to get your view and your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Okay, so I'll leave another minute there if anyone would like to come on and ask a question, or if you'd like to offer your comments or your thoughts. Okay, so it's typical with these events, and the questions come later on down the road. Louise, did you have your hand up? Hi, Louise, how are you? Getting a lot of background noise, Louise. There.
My laptop back where my voice.
Getting a lot of feedback on the line.
I'll try.
Perfect, Louise. Thank you. Type it in the chat and we'll have a look. So while Louise is typing her question in the chat, if anyone else has anything they'd like to add, please feel free. Deirdre, would you like to come on again? Your hand popped up.
No, I forgot to take it down. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Not seeing a message from Louise yet.
I think Louise is busy typing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you for that, Louise. It's a really salient point, and I don't know where we go with it, because actually, for me, for example, realizing sometimes that practitioners, people at the coalface of delivery, don't realize what's going on at the other end, and that there's a kind of a gap between if you like, the policies and then the practice is a really, really big question for us. My hope will be that we do it through a process of really working to hear people's voices and to start the conversations at centre level. So, where QA is embedded for every staff meeting, if they actually happen. I know they don't happen face to face at the moment, but and some of the questions and themes that come up, for example, at these meetings, through quality assuring assessment, but also through the other elements of quality assurance, are perhaps discussed in a thematic way at staff meetings. or for example, even sharing what's in the newsletter or sharing what information filters down at a staff meeting to get people's views and input will be very, very helpful to also promote the role of quality assurance and the impact on learners is important. What would you think of that, Louise?
Too much feedback.
But I think that's actually a good open question as well. I mean, we're coming to the end of this session, but it's a really good open question to raise as well. You know, because it's really at the core of our challenge in embedding or developing a quality culture.
Louise has just come back there with a suggestion to maybe email the newsletter to all staff.
That's an absolute like from me. That's what I want to happen with the newsletter. Send it on, please do, please, absolutely. And you'll also see in the newsletter that we've included it as an email address for the quality team. That we're happy. My colleagues will probably kill me now. We're happy for that to go wide and extensive. Do you know? Because what we're about here is literally having the conversations with as many people as possible. Does that make sense? And Wendy's reminding us too that the newsletter is on the staff intranet as well.
Point in from Deirdre Gallagher there.
Excellent point. I had a conversation yesterday, and this is for after this meeting. I was going to actually ask Wendy and Ashley to help me. I had a conversation with someone yesterday about bringing more of the information onto simple infographics. So I'm going to look at that as well. And I'm also handing over responsibility to more people to pass on the message, because I'm aware that I can get a bit wordy at times too.
Brilliant. That sounds
okay.
Fantastic, Angela. With that in mind, it's now 11:33. So I think we can call it a day. I would really like to express huge thanks to both Sandras. It was fantastic to hear best practice in assessment for further education and training from all sides and sectors of our organisation this morning. And a reminder as well about the two upcoming webinars that we have for ePortfolios. So the information for them is on the PD site. Just a reminder as well, if you could really encourage all of your staff to join up for the PD team site if they haven't done so already. There's tons of resources, recorded webinars and support there for all staff across the organisation. And that will really help us as we promote the culture of quality assurance and professional development for all. So thank you very much, Angela, for joining us this morning. It was great to have you there for the Q&A. And this recording will be made available for viewing also. So thank you very much.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, everyone. See you again
Bye, thanks a
in
million.
this room.